Hello, everyone, and welcome to Groundwater Talk Live. I am Tom Ballard, the Groundwater Guy, your host, and let's get some light here. So, my apologies for that. So, try to get a little bit of light. Again, let me see here. Come on. There we go. Now I'm not totally in the dark. So well, I may be in the dark, but I have light shining on me anyway. So our topic today is knowledge retention in the water supply industry, and this is a big deal. We have what we call the silver tsunami going on. Not only in the water supply industry, but a lot of industries. But it's affecting the water supply industry especially hard as people, the really senior people, are getting to retirement age or past retirement age, and they're aging out of the industry. We're not bringing in enough young people, so it's really challenging because those people are leaving the industry, and with it, their accumulated knowledge. So what water systems really need to do is have some sort of system to retain that knowledge and to capture that knowledge before they go. So we talked in back in February, on February 10th show. We talked to Joseph Blackman with Vitendo Training Solutions, and I'll put the link to that show in the show notes. He had an innovative solution that I really like, where they basically do videos and they attach barcodes to everything, so that you can scan it with your phone and you can watch a video of that piece of equipment. And so that's one way. We're going to go through a way, really basically just a checklist approach here. Is when people leave, you need to figure out some way before they leave, to capture the knowledge they have, so you can pass that on, and don't just let them leave without retaining that knowledge. So this, what we're going to talk about today, is a systematic approach, and this is a spreadsheet that the US EPA has put out, and I'll also have a link to that in the show notes. But so you can download the spreadsheet. But we're just going to go over that and look at that and kind of show you what you really need to do and what you really need to consider when somebody's leaving, so that they don't leave with that institutional knowledge and you got to learn it all over again. So don't lose that knowledge. Come up with a system before somebody leaves to capture that knowledge, and that's what the show is going to be about today. So. But before we dive into that, let me just say, like, comment, share. It all helps with the algorithm to help us get the word out there on the show. We're trying to build up the number of our subscribers. So I think we keep climbing up there, and more people are subscribing to the show, and I really appreciate that. And I've had a lot of feedback from people that some of the stuff we put out there has been really helpful to them. So so it really helps me when I get comments, to know we're on the right track. And even if you have a comment on things you'd like to see or hear on the show, I'm willing to do that, and we'll go there. And that's what the show is about, is providing useful information to you. All right, so we're going to talk today about knowledge retention and really a checklist. So when your senior people leave, if you have a guy that's been with you for 20 years and he's retained all that institutional knowledge, he knows where everything is, what buttons to push, what this quirky piece of equipment, how it performs, and you got to kick it in the right way to get it to work, whatever. You're going to need to capture that, but before they walk out the door. Don't just give them their gold watch and send them on their way. You really need to have some way to write it down. One way to do that is through SOPs, standard operating procedures. You need to get it all down on paper, or in the case of, like I mentioned earlier, Joseph Blackman's Vitendo solution, get it down on video, even better. You can videotape this stuff, put it into short segments that make it easily digestible and easily to consume to people, and that's another way to do it too. But whatever you do, you need to capture that knowledge. So let's dive in a little bit and look at this spreadsheet from the US EPA. This is a great spreadsheet, and I thought about doing something similar. I came across this and said, this has just got it all here. I really can't improve on this much. So that's really what we're going to go over today. And like I say, I'll put a link to this in the show notes so you can just download this yourself and use it. There's a lot here. Some of it we're going to kind of go through pretty fast and just hit the highlights, but you can download it and implement this. I would highly recommend this. If you have people that are looking at retiring, then you need to get this in place as quickly as possible. All right, so let's dive in here. And this is our spreadsheet. It's the knowledge retention sheet, knowledge retention tool spreadsheet for small water systems from the US EPA. And it's, if you can see the tabs at the bottom here, it has basically 18 tabs that you go through here. And so we'll go through each of those probably fairly quickly here. This just basically has a little bit of background here. It's divided up into different sections, and this basically just discusses this, what it is. But let's dive in here to the table of contents. This is your table of contents. It'll actually track your progress through the spreadsheet. So you have 18 spreadsheets here, 18 sheets that capture all this institutional knowledge. Now, some of this is going to be easier to fill out than others, but if you go through this process and capture all this knowledge, it's really going to give you something you can hand off to people that are coming in, and really the continuity of your system is really, really important. And I will tell you that it's not just the water industry, but if you look online about knowledge retention, some people in a lot of industries see this as a competitive advantage. So they look at knowledge retention in a company, getting it out, getting it down on paper, getting it on video, retaining it, however, as a competitive advantage. Now we're in the water supply industry. We're not so much worried about competitive advantage as we are as continuity of operations and operating efficiently. So not having to reinvent the wheel and learn stuff all over again. So that's really our intent here, is to be more efficient and ensure the continuity of our operations. But in industry, like I say, this is considered a competitive advantage if you can retain that institutional knowledge. So that's where we're going with this. You can see here we have 18 areas. We have our checklist that we're going to go through. Then we're going to have a system overview. We're going to have documents, people, source water, emergencies, security, filtration and treatment, process monitoring and sampling, operational supplies, system maintenance, storage, distribution, rules and regulations, technology, operator certification, neighboring utilities, and other information. So this is really a complete system, and that's why I say this is really something that I really like here, because it's very thorough. You go through this and you are going to have a solid basis to hand things off to new people coming in. So let's start off here with the handoff checklist. And so there's your progress is going to be up here at the top. It's going to keep track of things. You're going to want to have the person that's leaving the company. You want to have their name, job title, length of time and position, their supervisor, and basically get all that information in here. So you're going to have hold on a minute here. Let me I need to all right, an itchy nose. So sorry about that. I got an itchy nose today and it's making me sneeze. So this is our checklist. So basically your 18 sections are in this checklist. So your general section here, the title of the section, did you complete the section? and the section was reviewed by the supervisor. It's going to be really important when you fill this out that whoever's there is the supervisor is going to, or the person that's going to be in charge, review this to make sure it's complete. So we see that we have all our different sections here, and each section is broken down into your general section, general system information, system owner contact information. That's going to be your general section that we'll look at, or your system overview. And then everything else is broken down into different sections. You're going to want to keep track. The checklist is just going to allow you to keep track that you filled all these out, and then it was reviewed by somebody to make sure that it is complete. You have everything there that you need. So this is going to be what you're going to come back to make sure you got all this stuff filled out. And yes, it is a lot of information here, and it's going to be a process, but it's really important to ensure continuity of operations. And obviously, there's going to be more information in some of these areas than others. You're going to need to fill out, and not everything is going to be relevant, but this really gives you that checklist approach to really addressing everything. And then, when the person leaves, can we contact them, and what their contact information is, and then acknowledgement at the bottom here that everything has been completed and we have all the information that we can possibly get here. So all right, let's look at the different sections here. The first one is general system overview. And I'm not going to go through each of these things in great detail. The idea is to give you an idea of what this spreadsheet contains. You can download it, you can look it over, but the important thing is to see what's here, what you're going to be thinking about, what you got to be thinking about, and taking it from there. So we start off with our general system overview. So basically, your water system name, your ID number, your classification type, and everything about the system, the owner contact information, so who it is, their phone number, and just so we know general contact information. So that's basically your system overview. Pretty simple here. Um, and you can fill most everything out right in the spreadsheet. Some of these other things are going to require some additional information elsewhere, but the spreadsheet is going to allow you to keep track of that progress. So number 3 here is administration important documents. This is going to be standard operating procedures. It's going to be logs, sampling plans, other operation documents, historical reference documents, past sanitary surveys, um, uh, um, regulatory compliance inspections that you've had done, and key files you might have that you've developed internally. So the first section here is your standard operating procedures. And we've talked in the past about standard operating procedures. This is good to have. Most small water systems are kind of hit or miss on this, but I really think standard operating procedures are a great way to go. They don't have to be in great detail, but they standardize things, they get everything down on paper, and that's really what you need to assure continuity of operations. If there's any questions, you can go back to the SOPs and look it over. When you bring in new people, you can show them the SOPs and they can understand what needs to be done. And part of the SOP process, if you don't have it done and somebody's leaving with a lot of institutional knowledge, is here's your opportunity to get it down on paper and come up with your SOPs. So we've talked elsewhere about the format for these SOPs, so you can look at Groundwater Talk Live and you can see that. And the US EPA has some guidance on this as well. You can search out, and we might do another show just on SOPs at some point too. So logs, sampling plans, and other operating documents. Clearly, one thing I find a lot of is if you have water wells, is it's hit or miss sometimes on well logs. This would be part of that. If you have your sampling plan set up, which everybody should, that should be in here where it's at. the physical location, the description, the physical location, and how frequently it's updated. Um, we can see we got some other things here, the person responsible for the document and the date of the most recent update. So you're really capturing that information here. Historical reference documents, same type of thing, how often it's used, person responsible for updating the document. This is all going to be in here. And then key files. That's just going to be anything that you have that's going to help you with your information. It could be, supplier lists. It could be, anything like that. It could be, a piece of equipment, the operating manual on a piece of equipment. These are all key files that you're going to need, and you can see once again where it's located at, if it's electronic, where it is on the computer, how often you use it, the person responsible for updating the document, date of most recent update. So, what is the current document? Sometimes we get into versions of documents, and I've seen plenty of cases where people end up using an outdated version. And so it should be really clear what the most recent version of any of these documents is. So that's really an important part of this process as well. So your important documents are all documented here. People. Now you're going to have internal contacts. You're going to have external contacts. This is all going to be really important. And who are those contacts? We make a lot of contacts in the course of the business, and so this is really important. Is who is your contact list? So we can see here the fire department, police department, emergency medical, state emergency management office, hospital, urgent care facility, the water agency, the WARN network. Um, so these are your important contacts. If you have an emergency, who do you need to contact? Instead of looking it up in the phone book, it should be here, and all this information should be retained in here. The system staff contacts should be in here. The operator name, position, phone number, email address, what they do, and I think that's when should this operator be contacted? If you have, for instance, a contract operator, that information should be here in here as well. Lab contacts. Who's the person that you contact at your lab? Uh, Obviously, labs are a big part of things, so there is more information on the sheet 9 for this as well, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Um, Contractor contacts, emergency repairs. Who do you call out when you need a repair at 3 in the morning? these are regular repairs, emergency repairs. You need to know the name of that person, and everybody needs to know. Uh, Local and state government contacts. Who are your regulatory agencies that's dealing with things, and these need to be updated on a regular basis because uh, these regulatory contacts can change, so it's important to keep these updated. People kind of move in and out of positions at the state. And neighboring system contacts. Well, people would wonder why neighboring system contacts? Because in an emergency, the neighboring system may be somebody you need to go to. They may be able to help you out. You may be able to share knowledge. They may have a piece of equipment or a valve you need, and you can work out a deal with them. So, neighboring system contacts can really be valuable, especially in an emergency. But just sharing knowledge is important. So, you want to understand who your neighboring systems are, who the contact is there, and maybe get together with them on a regular basis, not just during an emergency. Your vendor contacts, obviously, you're going to have regular vendors, but you want to have backup vendors too. That should all be on this list. Other key contacts, schools, tribes, media. Who are your stakeholders? Basically, is what's going to be in here. Who are your media contacts? And so that's all your contact information here. Quite a bit in here to fill out, but you don't want to go searching for that. This is going to put it all in one place for you. All right, now we get into really operational thing. So your source water information. So um, this is a big deal. Obviously, if you're in the water supply industry, your source water characteristics. So you're going to want to document all this. So first your source water characteristics, and then your source water monitoring. And I would say there's a little bit of overlap on some of these spreadsheets. That's okay. Get it in here so that you don't have to go searching for it and say, well, what section is that in? If there's a little bit of overlap, that's okay. The information will be there when you need it. So source water characteristics: is it surface water, is it groundwater, the name, where's the source located, the watershed if applicable, other key information, um, pollution information, uh, watershed characteristics. It's of a well. You're going to want to have that information in here as well, and and then the source water monitoring. The parameters, what are your monitoring locations, the monitoring process, and that's going to overlap a little bit with the lab, obviously. How frequently, what equipment is necessary, calibration. Do you have an SOP for calibrating field instruments? State and federal regulations that are applicable, most recent monitoring, who analyzes the sample, the lab, is it done in house, and additional monitoring comments. This is going to be really important because source water monitoring is going to be a huge compliance issue. You're going to want to have that documented and make sure you don't miss anything. So, emergencies. So, quick responses here, emergencies. This is all your emergency contact information. We had some of that earlier, but we're going to go into more detail here. So your emergency response documents here. You should have an emergency response plan. Does your town have an emergency response plan? Is there a state emergency response plan? These are things that give you references. So who do you contact in the event of emergency? You have your immediate, quick response, but then there's other things that may come into play depending on the level of the emergency. So disaster response. So let's just scroll over here. Who has copies of this document? When was it last updated? You want to make sure that this is current. Um, um, are there exercises done that where people practice these things? That can be good. Often not done at small water systems, but you should at least review it on an annual basis, if nothing else. Do you have system alarms? We can see the components here. How are alarm triggers resolved if things are set off accidentally? You want to make sure those things work. If you have system alarms, you want to make sure they work. Is that part of your SCADA system? Your emergency generators. Do you have backup power? And how is that operated? What is the background on that? Carbon monoxide detectors, maintenance check, and then date of last maintenance check. You want to keep these things up to date. So that is your emergency information. Security. Um, Security is a big deal too, because we don't want anybody just walking into our water system. We've done a couple shows, both on one on system cyber security and then physical system security. This is important. We want to protect our water system. There are, as much as we hate to admit it, nefarious actors out there, and we want to make sure we have a security system in place. So this really reviews that and how does the security system work? Who's in charge? Drills, contact information, security system triggers. How do you react to when you get a security system trigger? Who's responsible for that? Um, the facility security system, we want to document all that. If we have cameras at remote facilities, and water systems generally have, everything isn't in one place. If you have wells out there, if you have remote tanks, Do you have security cameras out there? Do you have alarms? And how do you track that? So that's what this system really covers here, this section. And so our security systems. Treatment. This is a big deal. Obviously, we don't want our treatment systems to fail. So we want to document the filtration types, the types of treatment we do, how often the filters are backwashed, parameters that we monitor, and how often does the media need to be replaced, when was it last replaced. This needs to be documented regularly, disinfection, so our chlorination system or other type of disinfection system, the dosage, necessary chemicals, what we need to keep on hand, and additional treatment methods. So the same type of thing here, documenting all that. You can see there's quite a bit of stuff here we need to document, but this is important. If somebody new comes in, you can basically hand a lot of this information off to them, and they can understand things instead of letting them just find out what the deal is. Um, so process monitoring and sampling. So, what is our water quality parameter that we're monitoring, and when are measurements taken? What are you using to monitor that? If we're doing field measurements, if you're measuring free chlorine levels, for instance, what does your instrument make and model? How often do you calibrate that? When was it last calibrated? Um, is there an SOP for collecting these monitoring samples? It could be we just take samples and send them off to the lab, but we may have sampling equipment we need for that. So um, sample collection for lab analysis, we go into more detail here. The type of sample collected, uh, total coliform would be a big one here. Sampling frequency, what does your sampling plan say? The name of the lab, the type of sample collected, and once again, is there an SOP and does the sampler need to be certified? Um, these are important considerations. An SOP I find especially for sampling, an SOP is really a big deal because you can lay it out, especially somebody new comes in, you can hand them the SOP and it has it all laid out there. If you're not sure on things, the SOP should have all that information in there, and it's good to go back and make sure you're doing it right. The big thing I see out there is sampling for coliform. We get coliform hits, and it may have been because you didn't disinfect things properly. You didn't follow the proper procedure. Go back and look at the SOP, make sure you're doing it right, and get rid of those false positives. Uh, I see a lot of false positives with things like total coliform, and it doesn't have to be there. It's um, you need to make sure you're doing that right. The SOP can help you with that. All right. Uh, System operation. What kind of supplies do you need? So the equipment, the chemicals, the pumps. This is all going to document all that. The name of the piece of equipment, what it's used for, where is the equipment stored or where is it located at? Does this piece of equipment require any regular maintenance? When was it maintained or calibrated? How often does it need to be replaced? This gets into asset management. Um, when was it last replaced? And your manufacturer contact information should all be documented. Your chemicals, who's your supplier? What's it used for? The dosage. Um, this is, like I say, this is a lot of stuff, but this is a proper handoff and getting this institutional knowledge down. And lastly, we look at pumps, the pump schedule, pump cycling, operating set points, all a lot of information that should be collected before the person that's leaving moves on. System maintenance, same type of thing. General maintenance and flushing information is what we're looking at here. So, what type of maintenance do we perform regularly? And how frequently do you perform the activity? Um, who do you contact when a piece is needed in replacement or repair, and the contact information of the person that's going to help you out with that. That's usually going to be a vendor, but it could be a contract operator or somebody like that. And then flushing information. How often do you conduct flushing? How often do you flush your lines, for instance? How often do you clean your tanks? Is there a schedule? And then if you don't have a flushing plan in place, then here's some backup information. The top 5 or 10 areas where flushing is most critical, and these are going to be sometimes lines that stagnate a little bit, or closed loop lines may need to be flushed a little more often. So you're going to need to pay attention to that. And when was the last flushing? So this is regular system maintenance. Storage. Your storage tanks. What's the ID, the type of tank, the tank volume, the tank operating levels, the inspection dates. Tanks can corrode and rust out or have maintenance issues. So, have you done any coating? The last date of the exterior coating and interior coating all needs to be maintained to keep your tanks operating properly. So tanks and your storage is an important deal as well, and we need to keep track of that. Um, all right, let me scroll over here. Distribution. All right, so these are your distribution lines. So we're going to have your water system pipes and your valving, and then any other stuff, other operations, documents to record information about the distribution system, like maps of your distribution system. And I'm a big believer that this stuff should all be GPSed in as well. So your pipes, your transmission mains, your distribution mains, your customer service lines, how many miles or number of service lines, the construction material, and you may need to break this down. A lot of water systems have different construction in different areas, so you're going to probably need to break this down a little bit. And then in different areas, how many breaks do you have per year? That's going to tell you where you have maintenance problems. You may need to look at some line replacements. And then getting back to your asset management program, how many feet of old water main are replaced each year? And so that's your capital improvement plan, your asset management plan. Your valves, do you have valve inspection program? How often are the valves inspected? Once again, this is part of your asset management program. The location of the valves, these should be GPSed in. I think that's indisputable. You should GPS in the valve locations and the name of the supplier. And then, like I said, other operations documents can be in here elsewhere, but you're going to want to maintain all that. Um, Rules and regulations. We all need to comply with the regulatory environment and the laws. And so the important laws should be in here to understand. And so a new person coming in can understand what the relevant rules and regulations are. Now, we all have state regulations and federal regulations we need to comply with. But in certain areas, and this is important, you may have local health department rules that you need to comply with, and so that should be in here as well, because somebody new coming in may be familiar with state and federal regulations, but not always know what kind of local rules and regulations they need to comply with. So this is going to document that, and you're going to put that in here, and then required permits. This is going to be a big deal because uh, permits, you can get fined for permits lapsing and non-compliance with permits. This is a big deal. So you want to make sure you understand what permits you have, where they come from, how often they need to be renewed, who's issuing them, and then that contact information. And you need to make sure you're in compliance with your permits. So that they all need to be documented. And then waste disposal. Um, type of waste, volume produced, disposal method. The regulators are going to want to know how you disposed of your waste. Even if you're pumping to waste, you need to document that. Technology. Um, what is your software, your web-based programs and tools? You need to document that. Who's responsible for that? What programs do you have? You might have some specialized program, your SCADA programs, your accounting programs, anything like that. It should all be documented here. The description, where's it's installed, the license, the licensing, the cost, frequency of use, the location of the manuals. They may be online, but you need to document that. And for somebody new coming in, the big deal is there available training? Can you get them up to speed on this software? So that's all going to be important because they're going to need to know that. Operator certification. So the operators need to be certified. So what level is required for operations? It's going to depend on the operations of the water district. And so level required, the renewal frequency, the hours required for renewal, so the training that's required, the renewal contact information should all be in here, and that should be checked. And then the certification and training opportunities. Do you have any training coming up? Most operators are going to require contact hours every year, and so you can put that in here. For instance, in California, the California Rural Water Association provides training opportunities. That can all be in here, and the website, the contact. So how you get signed up on that? They have a great program, and so you can look at that, and that's going to be important to find those training opportunities because my experience is water system operators are always in need of contact hours, and they're always looking around for that. So it's good to find out where they can go for that. Now, neighboring utilities, we addressed that a little bit earlier. Um, this is important, not just in emergencies, but for planning. Say you have dropping water levels in your system and you're trying to track that down. The neighboring water utilities might be able to tell you, yeah, we're having the same problem. So we know that it's a regional problem. Um, if you need a particular part or a valve or something that you may not be able to get right away from your supplier, they might have an extra one they can lend you or sell you, and then you can resupply them. They may not need it right away. They may be able to help you out in an emergency. And if you need chemicals, you run out of chemicals. There's a shortage. You might be able to supply, and just working together. That having that mutual aid society can be really really important. So understanding who your neighbors are, having good relations with them, get together with lunch with them every now and then, and chat about operations and share knowledge of the your regulatory environment, your regulators, what problems you're facing, water quality issues. This is all good information to share and share that knowledge. So get together, network, and understand who you can contact in the event of emergency and where help can be had. And finally, we wrap up with other information. Everything always has to have an other category. So anything else that can go in here that's helpful to your job is going to be important. Who maybe you have some issues with topography. Um, Maybe you have some special maps in here that you use, some historical information. This can all be other information that can really be helpful. And so you're going to want to put it in there, capture that information, do some brainstorming, get that in here. The whole idea is that before your key person leaves or anybody leaves, absolutely, that's been there any time at all, they're going to have some institutional knowledge. We're going to want to all get that down on paper and documented on the computer, and getting back to our handoff checklist. These spreadsheets we all saw, they have their different sections in here. Just going back and reviewing this is stuff that we that we want to capture before they walk out the door, and we don't have to be constantly calling them up and they're saying, I'm busy with my new job, I don't have time to help you, or you just get quick responses. You're going to want to get this captured before they leave so that you got it, so you don't need to call them up in a panic and say, well, where's that valve, and where do we go from there, and who's our chemical supplier, who's our backup chemical supplier. These are all things that we really need to have thought of before they walk out the door. So that's important, and that's a good look. See, like I say, I will post the link to this spreadsheet. This is really a great spreadsheet, and it just really gives you a good checklist to say before that peer person leaves. He's been here for 20 or 30 years. He has all this knowledge that nobody else has. We need to capture that. This gives you a checklist to go through to capture that knowledge before they walk out the door, and you can provide continuity of operations. Really, really important as more and more people get ready to retire in this industry to capture that knowledge. And even if they're not walking out the door in a few months, and retiring, you're going to want to start this process anyway to get it down on paper. That's just good operations, and you can work this all into an operations manual that people can review when they come in, and that's part of a new person training. But it becomes imperative when somebody's planning to retire and they're going to walk out the door with all this knowledge. You want to make sure that gets captured before they go, but just as a general plan of operation, we're going to want to get the stuff down on paper or in the computer anyway. So that's our show today. I appreciate everybody watching and hanging with me on this. I know we haven't had a show for a few weeks due to various reasons, but we're back and we'll keep providing this information. If you want to contact me, you can contact me at tballard@groundwaterguy.com. I'm always happy to hear from people. As I mentioned earlier, like, comment, share. That always helps with the algorithm. But I respond to everybody's comments, and I'm always looking for ideas and sharing information. So if you got any questions, do not hesitate to contact me. I'm always interested in hearing from you. You can find us, our streaming channels. We're on the Groundwater Guy channel on YouTube. I stream to LinkedIn, so you can find me there under my profile at tballard.com. I post there, and you can contact me there. I'm on LinkedIn a number of times a day, so it's always good to contact me there. If you're interested, and if you got information to share, I'm interested in having guests on the program. I need to get back into that. This is the Book Me page and you can schedule a time to come on the show. I'd love to hear from you if you have information that you'd like to share. I'd love to have you on the show. And then lastly, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the Groundwater Talk Live. The Groundwater Guy YouTube channel, Groundwater Talk Live, all the shows are there. So please subscribe if you want to be notified when there's a new video coming out. Hit the bell there, and that'll give you a notification. So thank you very much for tuning in today. And once again, if you got any contact or you want to contact me, I'm always happy to hear from you. Have a great day.